Bodog poll question today asking you which Canucks prospect are you most excited for? Jonathan Lekkerimäki over in Sweden. He will not be coming to Youngstars. Danila Klimovich, he will. Or Jack Rathbone. Vote at Sikerson Price on Twitter. Bodog, Canada's choice for free casino games, poker tips, and sports odds. And in honor of our poll question, I wanted to point out that you can bet Lekkerimäki's Djurgården's team in the Swedish Allsvenskan. They're minus 200 to beat Västerås next week on your Bodog line of the day, and I hope our friend Mike Zanier doesn't crucify me for my Swedish pronunciation there, Blake.
Probably.
You know he's listening over there in Stockholm. Here he is, Jeff Paterson, one half the Rink-Wide Duo with Andrew Wadden. They recorded a new episode yesterday. Our Canucks reporter, who will be in attendance at Youngstars, taking feverish notes and breaking down every dump and every chase. Right, Jeff?
Well, trying to figure out who's who exactly out there, certainly in the first game on Friday night. And then maybe from there we'll have a little bit of a baseline of what to expect. Let's be honest, we touched on it briefly yesterday, just where the cycle of some of these teams are. Winnipeg and Edmonton look like they've got a little more top-end talent, this Vancouver team, and this is kind of the chickens coming home to roost, let's be honest. When you lay their prospect pool out there on a roster for a tournament like this one, there aren't a ton of young stars that are available to them, whether it's because Lekkerimäki's over in Europe or they've got NCAA guys in the pipeline that aren't here as well. But, you know, by my count, 16 of the players that were announced for young stars for the Canucks attended the summer development camp out at UBC. So Jeremy Colleton, his Abbotsford staff, they'll be running the bench. That was where he had a first look at some of these players. Hard to really get a book on them, though, if you're their coach. But, now he'll be pushing buttons and pulling levers behind the bench on Friday night and through the weekend. But 16 of them appeared at the summer development camp. But the thing that really jumped out at me, guys, 6 22-year-olds. Like, this is supposed to be the young part of young stars is guys that are just drafted, guys that are still teenagers. And again, because the Canucks just don't have an awful lot available to them and at their disposal here, filling out the roster around the fringes, but players that are their own property, they've got 6 22-year-olds attending this weekend in Penticton.
And go ahead.
I'm surprised they left Philip Johansson. If they're committed to taking 22-year-olds, I'm surprised they didn't want a few more reps from him here at Youngstars.
Yeah, again, I think he's over in Sweden, though, and has started his season over there, if I'm not mistaken. So, this is guys that are here and that are either going to play in Abbotsford or guys that can return to their Canadian major junior teams when this weekend is over. So, they're going to go with the guys that they've got. But, you mentioned some Swedes. Obviously, guys like Linus Karlsson. I think he'll be front and center from a Canucks perspective, and a lot of Canuck fans interested and excited to see what he looks like and what he can do. And Nils Aman, a guy that they signed as well. I mean, both of them are part of the 22-year-old bunch. And I have to admit, and I'm probably not alone in this, but to see Jet Woo's name on the list, like, you can't ignore the fact that has to be some sort of message to Jet Woo, who, started last season as a defenseman, finished last season as a forward. They still see him as a defenseman, but really, where does he fit in all of this? So, would kind of feel like this is a big year for Jet Woo to prove his worth and his value to the organization, that there's still some upside here, but I can't see that as anything other than a message that they're making him show up and take part in Young Stars.
I think he's going for Alex Friesen and Jordan Subban's record for most appearances at the Young Stars tournament. I thought Johansson was signed to come on over and play for Abbotsford this year. I don't see him playing in Sweden right now, so we shall see. It might have just been ego and feelings.
On Elite Prospects, it says he's loaned to Frölunda, so it might be a combo platter, gentlemen. It's hard to know.
Well, we shall see. Well, we'll see if he's here at Canucks training camp in Whistler in a couple of weeks. So answer me the poll, Jeff. Which of those three, or go off the board if you feel inclined, which Canucks prospect are you most excited about?
Well, Lekkerimäki has the highest upside, just being the new guy on the block, and there's still plenty of time to be excited for him. And we'll all watch his development from afar this year as he plays over in Sweden. But I think in the here and now, it has to be Jack Rathbone. We have spent so much time talking about him over the last couple of seasons. We have seen him at various levels. feels like a guy that did everything they asked of him when he was healthy and in the lineup. And last year's season was such stop and start, not just for Rathbone, but for Abbotsford as a whole with the floods and COVID. And obviously he had that injury when he got run hard from behind and missed some time there. But when he was in action, this is a guy, he's unlike really anything else that they have in the system. So, for that reason, they've committed to him now. 2-year, one-way deal. Like, it feels like it's go time. I think he'll be part of the 23-man roster to start the season. Being on the roster and being in the lineup, those are two totally different things. So he still has to prove himself. I don't know if Bruce Boudreau has ever seen Jack Rathbone play a hockey game. Now, Rathbone got called up on an emergency basis late last year, so he was around the team. Boudreau would be familiar with him and the name, but I don't know that Bruce Boudreau has actually seen Jack Rathbone. So remember, Rathbone started the season here last year, 9 games. And then they sent him down to the minors. They felt that his defensive game still needed some seasoning. So I'm really curious to see how much attention he has paid to that through the past year, through the offseason. And now he's got to come to this camp and put his best foot forward for a brand new coaching staff and a management group that clearly believes in him with the one-way contract. But again, contract's one thing. Finding and carving out a spot in the lineup on any sort of regular basis, that's now up to Jack Rathbone. So I'll vote for Rathbone in the poll question.
I'm with you there myself because of call it immediate gratification, but
yep.
I think the player has some upside. I think the opportunity here could be a good fit for Jack Rathbone. I want to get on to Bo Horvat, Blake, unless you've got anything further on Rathbone or anything else. Well, did the welcome mat today and stumped for Andrei Kuzmenko and Vasili Podkolzin to start the season with Bo. Kuzmenko's known as a creator off the wing. As we know, Bo isn't really, is more of a shoot first or finish centerman. And then just for Vasili, I think, a straight line power, take it to the net, sort of bull in a china shop mix with Bo. So I think you're a little bit of best of both worlds on each flank. And I think, both places would be appropriate starting points for the Russians, both the rookie and the second-year man. But you tell me, Jeff, who do you want to see playing with Bo Horvat since that came up yesterday? And as we know, who plays with Bo has sort of replaced the who plays with the Sedins winger question around the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, and I've spent a fair bit of time here, and I'm not alone, I'm sure, in the offseason, in some idle moments, just, depth charts in my head and trying to figure out who plays with whom, and also, try to get inside Bruce Boudreau's head and what did he see last year that he liked. And as much as I think in the best interest of the hockey club, it feels like it's time for Tanner Pearson to drop a little bit lower. But at the same time, Tanner Pearson and JT Miller formed a really strong bond, sort of playing that straight ahead, down low, win board battles kind of games. It wouldn't shock me if Tanner Pearson got an opportunity with JT Miller. I don't know if Brock Besser would be on the other side. That trio had some success immediately after Bruce Boudreau took over, so that's something they may look at. And then, from there, what does that leave for Elias Pettersson? Connor Garland is a bit of a wild card in this mix, too, and I'm sure we'll talk more about him as we get closer to training camp. But and I mean this in the best possible way, but I still think he's a difficult guy to play with as a teammate, just because he's so unique, he's so unpredictable, and I think it would be difficult to get into a rhythm sort of with the way that, all of his spins and shooting from anywhere, all those types of things. But maybe Garland and Paterson, they played together a little bit last year at times. So where does that leave Bo Horvat? For the reasons you lay out, Matt, like I'd be intrigued at the very least to see what that line would look like. I'm excited about Vasili Podkolzin just to see, hopefully he doesn't hit that second-year wall and that he takes all of his learnings from last year. And boy, the last couple of weeks when he was given the top 6 opportunity, he didn't look out of place. He produced for them. So Kuzmenko ultimately we know is the wild card. But if he's a bit of a playmaker, Mikheyev's speed opening up space for whoever he plays with, I think is really going to be interesting. And maybe Pettersson's the guy that would benefit the most from something like that. We know what Elias Pettersson can do with time and space. So if that was the way that they were to line up, that Podkolzin was on one side and Kuzmenko on the other, with Horvat in the middle, sure, why not? And, I thought it was interesting, and I pointed it out on Twitter yesterday, like, Bo isn't a guy that stirs the waters here, doesn't try to create controversy. And I don't think he was yesterday with the clip that you played about, he's been honest and he's not wrong when he talked about, for 5 or 6 years, it's been a rotating cast of characters, and it has. And so just for a little bit of fun, I went back and I used the 2017-2018 season and looked at Bo Horvat's most common line mates. And we're going back, 5 years, recent history. He played primarily that season with Brock Besser and Sven Berchi. So, a legitimate, at that point, Berchi was still seen as a legitimate National Hockey Leaguer. The second most common formation for Horvat was Besser and Nikolai Goldobin, as Blake's ears perk up.
Yeah. Pardon me.
The third he did get opportunity, Blake.
So the third most common set of wingers for Bo Horvat that season, Goldobin and Jake Virtanen.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
The fourth, check this out, the fourth most common grouping, Goldobin and Jussi Jokinen.
Yeah. Oh, Jussi.
And
Did
rounding
he have a
out
great
the
final week of the season.
And rounding out
off?
the top 5 was Jake Virtanen and Brendan Leipzig.
Yeah.
That was 5 years ago for Bo Horvat.
Remember the great goal Leipzig scored on Sedin's retirement night? Do you remember that, Jeff? Coming down the right wing off the backhand, if I'm not mistaken. Goals.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
He's been...
Thank you for that trip down memory lane, Jeff. It should be noted that he did not bring up the names Jason Magnar or Michael Chaput, but we were quite close. I believe there were 6 or 7 on the list.
He's not been regaled with the best. There's a lot of options for the Canucks this year. But, of course, there is also the option of 2 centers. We're trying to spread it out over 3. I think there's going to be a point. There is going to be a point this season where there's just 2 centers. And I don't mean because somebody's injured. That's possible, too. But I think there is a point where Bruce Boudreau stacks the lines and squeezes them all into the top 6.
And that's a nice luxury to have if you're a National Hockey League head coach. Depends on situations and opponents and what you're trying to do, but also the chess game of, how you want your opposing coach to react to what you might be able to do with your formation. So, I think Bo's point yesterday was, he truly believes. He said he was excited about Kuzmenko and Mikheyev. He didn't mention Curtis Lazar, probably more because he's not likely to play a lot with Lazar as a center, but it's just that the old thing about rising tides floating all boats, that no matter who he ends up playing with, it does feel like this is the best collection of winger depth. And even if he's the third line center, the trickle down is he's going to play with some decent players, certainly better than a lot of the guys that I just listed off there from 5 years ago.
The coaching style too, how he wants that line deployed. Do you think that changes for Bruce Boudreau? Does he let the horses run still? He had some success, but they didn't have a lot to lose last year because it's a lot easier playing from behind and being the underdog trying to come back into things. When you're 0-0 to start the season, are you going to be more conservative? That will be interesting to see with Bruce Boudreau too. And does Bo Horvat feel obligated to be the captain, to be conservative, to not take risks, to not push the envelope?
Yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot of conservatism in the way that Bruce Boudreau approaches the game. I mean, this was a high-scoring player in his day. He loves offense, and I think he wants his guys to play that way. But at the same time, it's the National Hockey League, and you have to recognize that it can't just be run and gun. But does that mean that Bo Horvat is going to settle into a more traditional third-line center? Take on some of those matchup roles. I mean, of course, last year the thinking was that was going to be Dickinson, and then he was going to free up a guy like Horvat to be able to think a little bit more offensively, and obviously it didn't pan out that way. So, you go into the season with plans and ideas, and then you get punched in the nose, and you have to adapt, and I think there will be an element of that for the Vancouver Canucks. But I just think that upping their talent level across the board will give Bruce Boudreau a few more options than he had, and I just come back to, we heard it from Travis Green, we heard it from Boudreau, we've heard it from management, a couple of management groups, they all recognize speed was an issue for this group, that they were usually the second fastest team on the ice last year, and one guy isn't necessarily going to flip that script entirely, but when you are, supremely skilled in that one area, as a guy like Ilya Mikheyev is, I really am interested to see what his presence alone And we've talked about, the impact that he can have shorthanded, but I'm talking about 5-on-5. Can he stretch defenses? Can he open up space for other guys? And then ultimately, can they take advantage of it? So I'm really looking forward to seeing, what he's going to look like. Again, what they're paying him, there's got to be some expectation. It can't be all about chances that he generated. There has to be a bottom line for him. But I do think that he's got such a unique skill set that he's going to be a welcome addition. They're paying a price to get him, but I think he is going to be noticeable against the backdrop of those other guys, a lot of whom don't bring the foot speed that a lot of players around the league do.
Kuzmenko's not Mikheyev in terms of speed, but what have you noticed when you've seen him at 8 rinks? I mean, is he? Are we going to be complaining about the speed of Kuzmenko? Is he just kind of fine? What do you think?
Yeah, my viewings have been limited, so I'm not going to sit here and write the book on him. But I think for me, I've noticed more his hands. It's hard to truly gauge the speed. Like yesterday when I was out there, a fair bit of the time on ice, they had brought both nets to the blue lines and played a smaller game where speed wasn't a factor at all. It was just small spaces and puck control and those types of things. But, some of the videos that the Canucks have posted as well, the hands are noticeable. Like, whether it's the KHL or the NHL, this guy has talent. And it's going to be adapting to the smaller arena or the smaller ice size, adapting to the speed of the National Hockey League game. But, he's done everything with this big smile on his face. Like, he seems just thrilled to be here. And so I think that, that's part of the battle. I'm not going to say it's half the battle, but, showing up in the right headspace. And he genuinely seems excited to start this chapter of his hockey career.
Part of the battle, and I love the kid's joy and enthusiasm coming on over here. You can tell that he's happy about this chapter, in this next chapter in his hockey life, and I think the market is going to absolutely embrace him, particularly if he gets off to a quick start. Marvelous stuff, Jeff. Thank you for this. We'll catch up tomorrow.
All right, guys. Thank you.